welcome to the Women on Water event here at British Water. We're so excited to have all of you here today. Just before we quickly start the event, I'm just going to run through a little bit of housekeeping and then I will pass over to Lila to start the event. So I just ask that you all keep yourself on mute. Of course, we are in a Zoom meeting. This is to enable everyone to see each other and communicate with one another, but that does mean that you can take yourselves off mute. I ask that you please remain on mute. If you do not, my colleague Cara will put you back on mute just so that the speakers can be heard and there's no scuffling in the background. And we also ask that you do not share your screens or share your screens when someone else is sharing, because one of the presenters could be sharing at the time. I also ask that if you have any questions, that you use the chat facility to ask them, and when it's an appropriate time, we will make sure that those are answered, or they'll be answered during the presentations. I wanted to let you know beforehand, we are using the poll feature today, so there will be some times where a poll pops up, and we just ask that you please participate in as many polls as you possibly can, because we just want to make sure that this is as interactive as possible for your own benefit. We are recording this event, and so it will be sent out afterwards, so you don't need to ask for the slides. We will make sure that this gets out to you all. And lastly, we'll be sending out a thank you email with some gift packages in them, so you have that to look forward to. If you have any questions throughout the event, like I said, please feel free to ask myself or Cara Nothnagel using the chat facility, and we'll make sure to get back to you as fast as possible. So Lila, if you would like to take over.
Thank you very much, Rianne. So welcome everyone, as Rianne said, to Women on Water. It's a bit weird doing it via Zoom, but it's great to see so many of you, and obviously many of you that we don't know and haven't yet met, so welcome. We're sure you're going to enjoy this event. Usually it's a physical event. Last year it was at MWH Treatment at Soapworks, but we're doing it virtually. So please feel free to give us feedback in terms of how you find it, and I'm sure you're going to find the presentations excellent. So first of all, just setting the scene really. I just first of all want to thank Women's Utilities Network, and I also want to thank the Institute of Water for supporting this event. Also Rachel Fletcher for giving up her time. I know she's extremely busy to be our keynote speaker, and the other panelists and speakers for taking part. So the reason why we organise Women on Water is because it's part of our Women on Water campaign, and these are initiatives that we have to support women in the industry. First of all, when we started this initiative, we thought there were maybe 15 or 20 women around, and then we organised our first event. We realised there were loads more women in the industry, and quite a few women that really could do with support, encouragement and a network. So what we're trying to do is not replicate anything that's already out there in the marketplace, but just to add something that enables women to network and get together. And the reason why this event has been organised today is because I started a Better Together call just shortly before the lockdown, because I was quite concerned about the supply chain and how they were being impacted. And then I thought, well, what about the women? You know, who's supporting all these women? Because there's lots of news in the press which says that women tend to be more adversely affected by COVID-19 because they're in part-time work, or they're caring, or there may be lower paid jobs, which makes them more susceptible to being made redundant or let off. So I really wanted to organise an event, and then Cara came to me and said she'd been speaking to a lady who is a single lady, and she felt really isolated at home. So I thought, well, we must do something. So this event is a result of that. So we really hope that you're going to find this a great event today. I'm sure you will, and just feel free to give us feedback. So I'm now going to hand over to Rachel Fletcher, who's our keynote speaker. As you know, Rachel is the Chief Executive of Ofwat, and we're delighted to have you, Rachel. Welcome.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's really lovely to be here and joined by so many women through the wonderful world of Zoom. And many thanks to Leela and the British Water team for organising this event and for inviting me to say a few. I was watching a comedy sketch the other day, which ended with a really exhausted Nicola Sturgeon walking off stage and ordering a wee crispy pancake. And I was immediately transported to the kitchen of my childhood home in the 1970s. There I am in charge of making what we called the family tea, but of course I now call dinner. savoury crispy pancakes and other frozen offerings featured quite heavily on the menu those evenings, along with really badly boiled potatoes, a spoonful of tinned sweet corn or something like that. And when I look back, I feel so sorry for my parents who had to suffer my early cooking. But I don't feel sorry for myself. Yes, I was a latchkey kid, but I loved being queen of the kitchen. But even more important than those moments in the kitchen, I was incredibly lucky to have a working mum who fought to have a career at a time when this was still seen as a bit radical and women's libbish. And I was really fortunate to grow up in a family where my right to take my education and my career as far as I wanted to was never in any doubt and was always really generously supported. Now, even as a young girl, this wasn't something that I took for granted. My maternal grandmother never missed an opportunity to tell me her story. She had to leave school at 14 when her father died, and the family put their limited money into providing education for her brother. Now, he was nowhere near as clever as her, according to my granny, yet he ended up as a hotshot lawyer, and she never progressed beyond being a typist. Her anger and frustration about the career opportunities that she missed is something that marked her and damaged her mental health until the day that she died. I carry my grandmother's story with me. I feel a debt to all those women who fought for equal opportunities and those like my mum who fought small personal battles so that today it is completely normal for women to have a career. And if I ever feel worn down by work, I remind myself how much like my grandmother I am and how bitter and twisted I would be if I'd had a life as a stay-at-home mum. I'm sure you agree that as women in 2020, we've come a very long way and we have a huge amount to be grateful for. We've got gender pay gap reporting, maternity and paternity leave rights. We've had 2 female prime ministers and we see women increasingly taking top jobs in FTSE 100 companies. The glass ceiling has been smashed, or has it? Now, I've been working in utilities for 25 years now, and I don't think I'm putting too fine a point on it when I say it still feels more male-dominated than many other sectors. And while it's great that we will soon have 6 water company female chief execs, it's only in the last 12 months that we got the first female board chair. And female executives are still in the minority and mainly limited to customer-facing roles. It feels like we've punched some holes in that glass ceiling, but it's still looming over us. And this worries me, because if we look up the ladder and we don't see anyone like us, it can really limit our aspirations. I remember only too vividly as a near entry grade consultant in the 90s, seeing literally not a single woman more senior or older than me. One thing was really clear: there was no career progression for women once they had children. Now, I managed to survive consultancy for over a decade and bring 2 fantastic children into the world, but only because I lived abroad and I worked part-time. So of course I was sidestepping, not confronting the issue. And I really did nothing to challenge the company view that you had to work 70 hours a week to be worthy of promotion. Now, this little story, I think, shows the real importance of events like today's, of the support that we can give each other as women. And if I've learned anything in my working life, it's that a lack of self-belief, more than anything else actually, is what holds us back in our careers. So let's use networks like this to build our own confidence and to challenge the status quo. And let's remember the women who have fought to get us here whenever self-doubt creeps in. Now, I've been talking about us each individually meeting our full potential. And that's really important if we're not to experience the disappointment that my granny did. But I also believe passionately that diversity in all of its forms is key to the water industry's success. The lack of women at the top of the water sector worries me because gender equality is the first step on the road to a diverse workplace. Women have had equal opportunities in law for several decades. We've been outstripping men as graduates for many years. So surely this is an area where we should be able to say job done. But we can't. And frankly, if we're not seeing full equality for women, then we are surely a very, very long way from achieving equal opportunities for those of the BAME community, those with disabilities, or those who haven't had the privilege I had of growing up in a middle-class home and going to a Russell Group university. The Black Lives Matter movement is a huge reminder, I think, of how far we are from treating everyone as equals, and it's something I think we should be taking seriously. And while this discrimination and exclusion is a tragedy for the individuals concerned, let's be clear, it is also something that is holding the water sector back. Now, I joined Ofwat in the water sector only 2.5 years ago, but I have to say it has amazing potential to make massive improvements to our natural world and to show to society what can be achieved through responsible companies providing life's essentials. And I know that many of you hold the same ambition and are working vigorously to achieve it. But if the water industry is going to achieve this potential, we need people who think differently, not just engineers or business managers, but people who think and have the skills of environmental scientists, of data analysts, of community engagement leads. We need to be able to draw the very best talent wherever it is and not be limited to drawing from pools of people who look like us on paper or in the flesh. And we need to be able to show the communities that we serve that we are just like them if we are to win their trust and really be able to serve them. And this ambition to embrace and celebrate diversity and to stamp out discrimination in whatever form it takes is one that we have given ourselves in Ofwat. And it's an ambition I hope I can encourage you all to support. Now, I want to end just by saying a few words about COVID-19. None of us would have wished a pandemic on our world, and I grieve to see how it is hitting the most vulnerable the hardest. But I also see it opening up some really exciting opportunities in the move to a more diverse and inclusive workplace. And let me close just by mentioning 3 of those opportunities. 1, we've got the opportunity once and for all to end the assumption that you have to be in the office or physically present at that meeting to get great work done. Ending this accepted norm would be a real breakthrough for anyone who has anything else going on in their life other than work. And let's be honest, if women ruled the world, we'd never have had 9 to 5 office working as the norm in the first place. Let's not slip back into making everyone work that way again. 2, as we use technology more and more to communicate with each other, It's making the workplace more democratic, giving new people, especially Generation Z or Z, if you're from Generation Z, which I'm not, a voice and influence, including at a senior level. The use of the chat function and the ability to break into small groups at the touch of a button is also giving people, the less extrovert and the assertive amongst us, a new way to express themselves. So let's make sure we keep all channels open, allowing new ideas to bubble to the surface. And finally, as we're seeing today, video conferencing is taking us into each other's homes. It's reminding us that each of us is a human being with interests and lives way beyond what we normally see in the office. Coronavirus has reminded us what really matters, which is people living happy, fulfilled lives. Let's not forget this as we move out of lockdown. So the past 4 months, I think, has given us much to build on and tools to allow each of us to have more fulfilled and successful working lives. But most importantly, we're being offered a path to a more inclusive and diverse water industry, one that uses diversity to reach its full potential. Let's not look back. Let's support each other and move forward to make all of our grandmothers proud. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Rachel. There'd be loud applause if we could. You can see some people hand clapping, but thank you. I'm really sort of impacted by your grandmother story, actually. It was really touching. So thank you so much for sharing that. And you're right, really. We're standing on the shoulders of giants and of our ancestors. So we really have to grasp the opportunities. So for example, for my nieces and nephews and young people that I mentor, I expect them to far exceed what I'm able to achieve. And I think that's really, really important. So that was really good. And also I love the fact that you highlighted the key things we really do need to keep now that we've experienced in terms of COVID-19, the good things. So, you know, with our fingernails, I haven't got that much, but we've really got to cling on to, you know, being able to work from home and have flexible hours if we can do that. And also, I think the fact that we don't, as you said, have to come into an office and then wear sort of like a suit or a uniform, I think it's made people much more accessible because you see them at home, maybe with their children running in with their nappies on and things like that and showing them to their parents or whatever. But I think it's sort of leveled out, I suppose, in a way that everybody's experiencing it, but in different ways. But I think it makes people a bit more accessible than they usually are. So thank you so much for that really moving and insightful keynote address. And I know that you have to go off to another event, but thank you so much for joining us, Rachel. So now I'm going to hand over to Hayley Monks. So Hayley is the co-founder of the Women's Utilities Network, a great networking organisation for women across utilities. And she's also the managing director of Think, Inspire and Create. And she's certainly going to do that when she presents. So thank you. So Hayley, over to you.
Start by unmuting. That's always good, isn't it? Thank you very much, Lila. I'm going to put some slides up here. Hopefully you can all see them. It is lovely to see so many beautiful faces. Gosh, there's a lot of people on here, isn't there? It's amazing. Thank you. So I am Hayley Monks, and as Lila said, I am the co-founder of the Women's Utilities Network. We are now 2.5-ish years old. The Women's Utility Network started as kind of a bit of a one of those sort of pinnacle moments. Was at a networking event with one of my fellow founders, Angela Pert, and we were the only two women in a room full of men. There were about 70 of us in the room, and this was at a utilities event. And so we sort of migrated to each other to have a good sort of chat about why we were the only two women in the room. And at that moment there, we said, this has to change and we have to do something about it. Now we'd had a couple of glasses of wine, so it did seem like a really a good idea. But we sort of got a couple of other fellow founders together and proposed the idea. And here we are, as I said, 2.5 years later, we've got more than 1,800 members. And it's a really solid network helping to support women in the sector. We're all from the utilities or have backgrounds in utilities. And I myself worked on the energy side of it for 12 years. And even with my business today, so I'm managing director of Think, Inspire, Create, we work with organisations primarily across the utilities sector. So although my background's in energy, I still do actually work with water companies today. So it's an absolute delight to be here today. A little, some of the things around one, it's about building confidence, building careers, supporting women. We've got better in the last few years attracting women into the sector. A lot of people are inspired by net zero and what we can do for the planet. But actually it's keeping them in the sector, and we're not terribly good at keeping them in the sector. So we're trying to do lots of work with women across utilities now to try and retain them and figure out the reasons why they want to leave. And the fact that we're a massively male dominated sector is one of those things. So communities such as this are so important so that like-minded women can get together and can talk to each other and can support one another. So what am I going to talk to you about today? Well, I'm going to talk a bit about personal development. So the other part of what I do under Think, Inspire, Create, so you'll see our TICL there. We're known to our colleagues and our customers as Tickle, Team Tickle. It's a lot easier than saying Think, Inspire, Create. And we do some people development stuff. And this is a snapshot of a personal development one, which I want to talk to you about today, because I think it's probably something as women, we maybe put ourselves last. Certainly if you're busy and you're focused on your career, or certainly in the last 6 months with COVID, if you're a working mom, you're probably putting yourself last. So I want to kind of raise that awareness, thinking about yourself and maybe think about you and your future. So start here. Alice in Wonderland. I do love Alice in Wonderland. I'm fortunate to live on the outskirts of Oxford, where the fabulous Lewis Carroll was at Christchurch College, and inspired by the huge tree, which is still there if you want to go and see it, and the gate in the garden, he wrote Alice in Wonderland. But there's a really poignant part in Alice in Wonderland which I'd like to read to you, because I think this is where personal development starts. Alice is in the woods and she meets the Cheshire Cat, and she said, "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" "That depends a good deal on where you want to get to," said the cat. "Well, I don't much care," said Alice. "Then it doesn't matter which way you go," said the cat. "But actually, so long as I get somewhere," Alice added in explanation. "Oh, you're sure to do that," said the cat, "if you only walk long enough." Now, hopefully that kind of starts you resonating, but actually a lot of people come into their jobs and they work really hard, and some people then get somewhere and they achieve something that's great. But actually, if you have a focus or a goal, or somewhere where you actually want to get to, and you're clear on that, knowing that target and knowing that destination, you're going to be much, much more successful in your journey of trying to get there. So what I want you to think about today is actually think about, a personal development plan being something you do for your organization as part of the year-end review. Your personal development is something you do for you and about what you want and where you want to get to. And it doesn't all have to be work. So it could be you want to learn to speak French. It could be you want to get healthy, run a marathon. It could be learn new skills so you can adapt to the working environment over the next few years. Whatever it is, but to start to think consciously about where you want to get to. And then when you look at the paths, you'll know which one to choose. So often we can get a little bit stuck in what we're doing. So it's that, and that's a really good thing to reflect on, is that where are you now? The one thing that has been quite shocking about the COVID and being locked in is that whilst we've all been in the same storm, we are not all in the same boat. You know, each of us at home, it is all very different and very personal. So you're thinking about where you are in your life, in your career, and what you're doing now. So you could, I mean, if this personal development scale here, have a look at it. If there's one area that really resonates for you and you're happy to put that in the chat, it'd be really interesting to see where people are. But are you stuck in a rut? Are you feeling sluggish and bored? Our brains are wired to protect us, and we like safe and secure routines, but sometimes we just get into the routine that when we stand back and go, oh my God, I've been just working like by rote and actually forgot that where I am, I'm just stuck in this rut, or I'm just coasting and I'm comfortable. I'm not really challenging myself. And to develop and grow and to try new things means change as well. So a lot of people at the moment may be slightly adverse to change because there's so much change going on. But taking those few minutes to sit back and reflect on where you are in that journey and where you want to get to can actually be really empowering. And really empowering because then it's choice. Okay, you're not just allowing life to take you forward. You are saying, actually, I'm choosing right now not to do anything because of this, because of this, because of this. I'm actually choosing to do it. Life's just not making it happen for me. And there's no right or wrong in any of this. It's all very personal. But if you start to try and test new things, you might, you could be sharpening up your act. You could be pushing yourself really out of your comfort zone. But wherever you are, it's good to know and to reflect on it. So you can say, wow, I am here. This is where I am. And this is what I want to work with. This is where I want to go. So those kind of things that start to get you thinking more about yourself. And as working women, we as I said, may not find the time for it. We might put ourselves second, third, or fourth on the list. So I would urge you as an action coming out of today to diary some time in your calendar to sit and think about you. Okay, to sit and think about which road you want to take, what is your destination, and maybe where you are today, and bring those thoughts together so you can start to plan the other things. And the reason why I say book it in is because we're always all busy, but a busy woman will schedule it in her calendar and then things will work around it. Whereas if you kind of say, I'm going to catch up with it, I'm going to catch up with it, I'm going to do it, we invariably don't, because we sacrifice it for other things. So try and put something in your calendar and have that focused time on yourself, because that's then where you can start to a bit of goal setting. So what is it you want to achieve? And write those down. So it doesn't matter how you do this. I love drawing. I'm a really visual person. So a nice big A3 sheet of paper and some colored pens, and I'll start to draw about what I want to do. Why do I want to do that? And that's the other thing. What's our driver? What's our why? Our purpose? And understanding that and how passionate you feel behind that helps to drive success as well. Knowing your why. And then when you're going to achieve it. And these things about being super realistic here about when you're going to achieve it. So depending on what you're setting yourself out to do, these things take time. So I'm currently at the moment training for a marathon. And I've never done a marathon before. I didn't just fall out of bed one morning and say, right, I'm off to do 26 miles. I've got a program of work over 20 weeks. And I've got to incrementally step up and do that. So whilst my ultimate goal is to be able to run a marathon, and my why, I want to prove it to myself. When I was coming up to 40, I had 40 things to do before I was 40. Now I'm nearly 50. I've got 50 things to do before I'm 50. Running a marathon is just one of those on the list. But that's a personal challenge to me. I'm aiming to do it in September. And so setting the goals and setting the routine has allowed me to stay focused on getting to my goal and achieving it. So whatever you do, whatever it is, I've just given you like a fitness one there, but you can set it out in that way, but start to think of what you want to do, why you want to do it, and when you're going to achieve it. And then thinking about what the things you want to do and what skills and capabilities you have to get here. I absolutely adore this strengths map, and I'm very happy to share this with you afterwards. It's an amazing tool, and it's so much better than a SWOT. So this is not a SWOT. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through this for just a couple of minutes to explain it. When we send this out to you, we will send out a whole page of capabilities, but it's not an exhaustive list. We've all got lots and lots of capabilities, and you can sit and reflect on your personal capabilities and say, is that a strength? Is that something I'm naturally good at? And does my personality help or hinder me? Or is it a limitation, like I don't have a skill set or a knowledge, and maybe my personality would help or hinder it? So to give you an example, to put this into context, I'll give you myself an example. A natural strength, as you probably guessed, I quite like talking. I quite like public speaking. Give me a microphone and a stage and I'd be in my element. Always loved it ever since I was little. And on personality profiling, I have some extrovert tendencies. So this is a natural strength for me, this area. You can put me into a situation like that, give me a microphone, and I'm fine. I don't have to work very hard at it. I don't get particularly nervous. Just get on with it. A fragile strength. So when I was doing my degree, when I did my finance part, I got distinction in it. It turns out I'm quite good at numbers. But my personality is not one that's particularly good at sitting down, focusing lots of time on numbers and spreadsheets. I get bored very easily. I want to move on to the next thing. But I can do it. And so that's a fragile strength. It's something I know I have to work on. So I have to understand myself and how I work. So I'm a morning person. So if I'm going to work on a fragile strength, I'm going to work on it in the morning. Because by the time I've got to the afternoon, I'm already bored with the rest of the day. And so then to try and do something that actually I know is a fragile strength wouldn't be good. So understanding that area. Now, on the other side, limitations. So I don't know from a knowledge base how to sell. I've never done sales and marketing. I don't know any of it. I don't know the tools or the skills to do it. But if I sort out the right training, I could probably build up that capability, because my personality should help me to do that. And so that is a potential strength that I could work up. So if I went and got some knowledge and skills, or sought some training or some coaching or some support from somebody else, I could probably work up on that. And then a resistant limitations, and this is being aware of trying to do something that just it doesn't mean you can't do it, it just means it's really hard. So to give an example on resistant limitations, I am mildly dyslexic. So anybody who works with me will know sometimes my emails are a bit strange, just say, words in the wrong order, things like that. And of course, my personality doesn't help me with that, because I'm just sort of exuberant in doing that. So my workaround, make sure you recruit somebody in your team who's really good on detail, who's got attention to detail, and will always check things and guide things through as well. It's always going to be a challenge for me. I've accepted that. And so now I make sure I get the right help at doing it. Now, why underdo all this? Well, firstly, it's a fantastic exercise to do. And if you can do it with colleagues as well, because we're often not very good at saying how brilliant we are at things. So, focus on your strengths, really understand your strengths and map them, and then put that in with your wants and your development plan. Where are you going? And are you playing to your strengths, or are they things you need to work on or work up? And that then can help shape the amount of effort you might need to put into it. Because if we go for something that's a natural strength, you're just going to fly straight away. But if you're choosing something that's a fragile strength or a potential strength, then you might need other tools and techniques or support to help get you through that. So that's about taking steps, thinking of short-term aims and how you're going to do it. Now, there's a basic personal development plan here, because I like a bit of organization and structure, where you think, well, what am I trying to achieve? Is it a structured development? Do I need to go on training? Is there something do I need a formal qualification? So if you do decide you want to go down and become an accountant, obviously you would need formal qualifications. But if you're just looking to learn new skills, then maybe you can do some informal or self-directed development. There's so much available now on the internet and audio books and things like that. But when are you going to do it? And this should be a live document. And whether you use a form such as this that I've put up, whether you have a mind map, whether you have a vision board, or you keep it in your notebook and your calendar, and it's pinned to the fridge, however you do it, it's about having it live and working with it all the time. Because the minute your brain starts to focus on this, so much is going to happen. It's like deciding today you want to buy a red Toyota. When you go out, you'll see red Toyotas everywhere. Your brain is locked into the thing you're looking for. So if you've decided, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to focus on, your brain's going to help you keep finding those things to look for as well. So just to kind of wrap that up a bit and give you an opportunity then to ask some questions. Setting yourself up for success, whilst everybody looking at you and your friends and family might think you're Superwoman, we all need some form of help and support. And I think that is so important, that we are not alone. There are a lot of people out there that really want to help you, support you. And I try and give people different roles in my head. So I know who's my cheerleader. I know who I can go to for that pick me up when I need somebody to say, do you know what, you're pretty damn good, and you're good at this and you're good at that, and and we're here for you. Who's the person you can pick up the phone to? Who's your cheerleader? Get feedback. Now, a lot of people don't like to ask for feedback because they might not like what they hear. And so I try and think of feedback as a gift. So your gift might be, liken it to a knitted jumper off your grandma at Christmas. And you open it, you think, yeah, maybe not. You have an option at this point to try it on, see what it looks like, see how it feels, does it fit? Or you can go, it's not for me right now, and put it in the drawer and not go back to it. And that's how you have to take feedback, is you go and ask the questions, and it's someone's opinion. Take out the bits you want, take out the bits it will be valuable. Try stuff on, see how it feels. Doesn't mean you have to do it, but get that feedback, because what you'll find as well is that people will really recognize some of the things you're brilliant at that you might actually be being a bit shy about, and you can see those as great strengths then that you can work on. Then who can help? Who can give you that helping hand? And I think you can do this in communities, and you can do this with colleagues in work. I try to think of it as like a wants and offer. What I want or need to be successful on my journey, but what I can offer. And then I can kind of do a bit of a swap exchange, or not necessarily a swap, but pass it on. So I might help Angela with something in the Women's Utility Network, but then somebody else might help me with something. It's knowing what you're looking for, you can then go and find people to help you. And as I said, have a live plan. It's not something you look at every 6 months or a year. It's got to be live. It's got to be working. And so you're continually iterating it and focus on it. And you will be stunned at the acceleration you will feel in how you're developing yourself. So with that, I'm going to shut up for a minute now and see if there's any questions or anything you guys might want to ask about what I've shared today.
Thank you so much, Hayley. That was a great presentation. So much in there. And I think one of the things I took away from that was setting a goal means you have to set a routine. I think these things require some work, like having that sort of personal development plan sheet, looking at your strengths, looking at the things that you're good at in terms of your personality. And also, I like the fact that you highlighted that when people do encourage us or recognize us for the good things that we're doing, we need to say thank you. I think sometimes, especially if we have a new outfit on and somebody says, oh, that's a nice dress. You say, oh, this thing, oh, I only got it from X, Y, Z, or it was only £5 or whatever. And we just don't need to say those things. We can just say thank you and leave it at that. So I think sometimes as women, we're not always great at receiving praise or receiving encouragement. So I think that's really important. So I'm now going to hand over to Cara, because I know that some questions are coming in. So she's going to fire those to you.
Hi everyone, great to be with you this morning. Thank you so much, Hayley. I thought that was so practical and insightful. I like an inspiring talk, and I also like to know, well, what do I do about it? So thank you so much for your insights. So we've had a couple of questions come through. So Lila, who's such a good student, she has asked, how might personal development plans be impacted by COVID-19? For example, opportunities might be limited in the workplace. What do you have to say about that?
So I think that's there's two sides to that. So firstly, is personal development impacted by COVID? No, in short, because so a lot of us have spent time commuting, so trains, planes, automobiles, and we're saving all that time right now. So I know within the first few weeks of COVID, I was doing like an online course myself. So I could still be, super mum, run my business, go out and do some running and do some learning. And I know it's not the same for everybody. Like I said, we're in the same storm, but not in the same boat. So this is, can be different for each person. But the time that you would have done traveling, or maybe, in between meetings, or those kind of things at work, these are opportunities. So I think it's giving us an opportunity to invest some time in ourselves that we wouldn't have. But in terms of opportunities in the workspace, yes, businesses are changing. But that's all the more reason to get ourselves skilled up, to get ourselves more knowledge, because it's going to be a more competitive environment as well. So I think it's a bit of a window of opportunity for us to look at the landscape and look at the skills that we might be able to brush up on or develop, and use the time that we have now to do that.
Thank you, Hayley. What I really love about the way you're challenging us this morning is to remove personal blockages or excuses, so to maybe not let the circumstances around us dictate what we can or can't do, like you say, within reason, depending on what boat you're in this storm. And I really like that. Someone once said that to me, and they said, I don't like exercise. That's not, I'm trying to learn to feel motivated. I don't like it, but I know I have to do it. And someone said to me, put your exercise clothes at the bottom of your bed and get dressed. As soon as you get up, get into them. So it's not an excuse, just do it. And I really love that approach where you're being practical about just removing blockages and perhaps mental excuses in our minds. That's brilliant. Just to put everyone's mind at rest, we are going to send you the slides, all the presentations that you're going to see, everything that you're going to hear, that's going to be part of your gift packet at the end of these presentations. So rest assured, you're going to get all of this information. So someone asked, do you have a preference for personality profiling assessments that you could recommend? Someone mentioned Myers-Briggs, but do you have one that you like?
I've used loads over the time: DISC, Myers-Briggs, Insights, the colour profile. I think they all have a place. The key thing is what you do as a result of them. And just remember, as you do them, they are not you. They are not labels. So I hear some people go, "Oh, I am such a red person," or "I'm such a ABC character." Well, you're not. You have those preferences or those tendencies. We're all a beautiful selection of colours, and certain environments make us behave in certain ways, or they bring out certain characteristics. So they're really useful. I would also make sure you've got qualified people doing it with you. But I would also say that, take the key elements from it and do something with it. Don't label yourself in a box as that's who you are and you can't do anything else.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. That's brilliant. And someone asked, how do you go about asking someone to be a mentor? It might not be an obvious person.
So knowing why you want them to be a mentor, that's the great start. So you've chosen them. Why have you chosen them? You've chosen them because maybe you've just done your strengths map and you've decided you want to brush up on this skill, and you've asked some people and they say, this person's excellent at that. So I think explaining, so it's really flattering when somebody says, "Oh, would you mentor me?" And you ask why? Well, they just want mentoring. It's kind of what do you want from the relationship? So be really clear. And I think you can say, I recognize you're great at this, or everyone tells me you're really brilliant at this, and it's a skill or capability I'm looking to develop. Would you be able to give me some time?
Absolutely, yeah, that's really helpful. And then someone asked, I think COVID-19 is impacting our potential to really meet and new people. How have you, and you've touched on this a little bit already, Hayley, but how have you managed with this during the last few months? So how have you managed your boat in this storm, I guess?
Yeah, so being an extrovert and being locked in is quite hard, because actually you want to get out there, and it's as I said at the very beginning, which I genuinely meant, it's really lovely to see all your beautiful faces, but you don't get the same energy as if you were in the room. And so, you know, an extrovert who gets their energy from other people and feeling that's quite hard. So you come to love Zoom and video stuff. At the Women's Utility Network, we were doing weekly calls, which we're getting together and doing like this. It was hosting. And just, you know, exploring all the technology, I emailed out to 20 of my key business contacts and just said, if you fancy a coffee and a chat, just I'm all ears. And some of them we were on the phone. The weather was beautiful, if you remember at the start. So I'd walk around my garden, you know, chatting with somebody. And some of it was like this. And you do learn to adapt to it. But I think it's reaching out and talking to people. Most people are quite happy to have a coffee and a chat. But, you know, create small networks, create little groups, your micro networks, and have those discussions, you know, all together.
That's brilliant. I think for myself, I've found that I'm a really relational person. And I think one of the things that not being in person has made me feel like is I've had to be a lot more vulnerable, actually, because you're not with someone in the room where they can say, are you sure you're all right? And then talk about it. I've had to be more vulnerable and reach out for the help I've needed and say, I'm actually not all right with this, or I actually don't know how to do this, rather than expecting those to pick it up around me in a way that sometimes you can do in person. So I think that sometimes it's not that there's necessarily, it can't happen. It's just, it pushes us to the edge of our comfort zone, even relationally as well.
Yeah, having a safe place to go to. So my team in my business, we have a daily check-in. It's called Homework in Squares, you know, because we're homeworking and we're all in squares, and that's how it started. And nothing's off the menu, you know. So you want to come on and you moan because you've been homeschooling and you can't even, you know, they don't do long division like we used to do long division and all those kind of things, you know. It's having that safe community of people to talk to.
That's brilliant. Just reading through some more of these questions. Okay, so I think this is a really good. So someone's saying, I've always struggled with the personal in the personal development plan, as I've had at various times I've populated it with tasks that I need to do better in the particular role I'm in. And a few years ago, I found the confidence to write one for me, and one for using at work. It was a bit of a breakthrough for me. So would you say something about personal and how they get used in the workplace? So a few questions have come through about this. So how is there a way of translating this personal development plan to workplaces or to your organisation? How do you go about rolling that out?
Yeah, so organisations use personal development plans as part of an annualized calendar. Everybody should do it. Everybody should go through it. They should be thinking about aspiring to that. And as a result of that, they've become something rather routine and perfunctory, in that we just do it, and we're doing it because we've got to tick boxes for our organisation. So firstly, as I go back, it's personal. So it's personal to you. And I think if you're going through and setting one out, and you know that this may be explored with your line manager and the boss, whether you code them to say, these ones are about me and I'm not comfortable sharing them with my boss, and these ones are work related and I'm comfortable sharing these. So you're prepped and ready. What they should be is about bettering you and about self-betterment. So if actually it's getting better in your role, that's fine, and you can share it with your boss and say where it's going. If it's actually, I'm trying to develop skills because I'm thinking broader and where I might go career-wise in the future, that's entirely up to you whether you share it. I think often when we're doing them in the workplace, we think we've got to be adding value to the business. Actually, you've got to be adding value to you in your role, which in turn adds value to the business.
That's such a brilliant distinction. I love that. I think I've got to wrap up now and hand back to Lila. But I just want to say, if anyone's got more questions from this section, please feel free to message me personally. My name is Cara Nosnagel, and perhaps Hayley and we can work together a little bit afterwards and put together some more answers or a way of presenting some more feedback to you. But thank you so much for everyone for being so open and honest, and for really making this a really interactive time. We appreciate it. And thank you, Hayley, for just being so practical and insightful. Really value your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Cara, thank you so much for managing that Q&A. You did a fantastic job. Thank you. And thank you to Hayley. I think one of the things I might suggest to both you and Hayley is that maybe you respond to some of the questions, outstanding questions that are there, and then everybody could see them, if that's helpful, if you don't mind, Hayley. So now we're going to move on to Lisa Lloyd. So she's a chartered psychologist, psychotherapist, trainer and consultant. And she's a trainer and consultant of It's Time for Change. So her presentation is going to be focused on your mental health and well-being. So I think it's going to pick up some of the points that came through earlier. So Lisa, we're looking forward to your presentation as well. So over to you.
Thank you very much. So let me just set my, share my screen with you all. Okay. So I'm really delighted to be able to talk about mental health and wellbeing, because there's actually been so much talk about mental health and wellbeing over the last 4 months during COVID, but there's a kind of, everyone interprets it in their own way, and it's about understanding what we really mean by mental health and wellbeing, and there are very different views about it, and I link it a lot to engagement. So I work with organisations to help people be their best. So my approach is about helping workplaces think about getting the people right so they can get the business right. So there's a lot of focus on trying to work out how to increase sales and drive productivity and so on. But actually I always start with, if you look at the people and support them, then they will naturally thrive and be their best. So when we think about mental health and well-being, it's something that we actually need to plan for. And I think that people tend to just take quite a passive approach to it and just, they might best monitor what's going on for them. They don't actively seek to work to drive better mental health and wellbeing for themselves. They just kind of wait and see what happens. And it's something that actually we need to plan for. In terms of being working women, we're all very good at planning our work and planning how to juggle work and potentially children and potentially other caring duties we've had during COVID-19 and so on. But actually, how often do we take that step back and really think about what's going on for us? So what I'd actually really encourage you to do now, if you're happy to, is actually just put in the chat box to everyone how you think your mental health is affected by work. So how does your work impact on your mental health and your well-being? Just some ideas would be really good to see, because I think it's very easy to kind of get pigeonholed into, when we think about the workplace and we think about our mental health and well-being, we often will talk about the idea of stress, we talk about the whole idea of anxiety around at the moment, about what we're not sure what to expect, what's going to happen next. But actually our work gives us, if we can shape it right for us to fit us really well, it gives us that sense of identity, it gives us a sense of meaning and purpose, it gives us that sense of emotional connection, it gives us a sense of status in terms of being who we are and what we're proud about. So it's really beginning to think a little bit about your work as really positive for your mental health, as long as you shape it and are very aware of it and you start to manipulate it in a really positive way. So I would, these are pictures of plants from my garden a couple of years ago. And actually, one of the things that's been really good about COVID for me is that having my young children at home, they've now taken on more jobs. So actually my plants are looking much healthier because my daughter's now responsible for watering them. But the one on the left is about sort of, are you surviving? There's a sense of, if you don't nurture something, if you're not aware of how to do what you need to do for you to be at your best. And we tend to just think about sleep, and we tend to think about drinking water and having food and exercise and so on. But if we don't really look at the opportunities that we need in order for us to thrive, we end up just hanging on. And I see so many times people who are in that position of, you can tell they've got real potential, you can tell they've got so much to offer, but they're just not in the right environment to be able to flourish, unlike the plant on the right. And it's really important that we think about our mental health. And I know some people think it's a bit of a luxury. It's the kind of, you know, how can we possibly take time for us and take a step back and do what we need to do when we're trying to look after kids and we're trying to do the job and we're trying to look after stuff around the house and potentially other caring responsibilities. It feels a bit of a luxury. And actually, I always challenge that in the sense of it's not a luxury. It's something that we really need to do, because if we prioritize looking after ourselves and we put ourselves into the best position for us to be able to thrive, and that has a knock-on effect with everyone else around us. And there's some research done in the last few years which shows that when you put yourself into a place where you feel that you're able to thrive, that you feel you're not stressed, you're not anxious, you're not even neutral, but you're actually feeling positive, it can have a 31% impact on your performance, on your productivity. It is staggering. So, you know, it's not when people talk about this being the soft stuff, it's by contrast, it has quite significant impact. And it's something that we do need to prioritize. So I'm going to demonstrate this now in terms of doing something called a divergent thinking test. I don't know if any of you have got pens or paper or anything to hand. Hopefully you have. If you haven't, do it on your phone. I'm going to ask you to make a list. So when you can see here a lot of paper clips. And if I was to ask you to, in 20 seconds, think about the number of uses you could have for paper clips, you could get quite creative potentially. So, you know, you could use it to scratch an itch, or you could use it to prod someone nearby if they're being annoying or whatever. So you could kind of come up with a whole list of things. And I'm going to demonstrate this with you in a moment. So if you will make sure you've got a pen and a piece of paper. What I'm going to do is to pick on someone. Now, we've got quite a lot of people on this call. And at random in a moment, I'm going to choose someone, and I'm going to unmute them, and I'm going to ask them, and if I haven't got a camera on, I put the camera on, I'm going to ask them to share their list for 20 seconds to come up with how many uses of a particular word, okay? So you've all got to be ready for your microphone to come on and for your camera to come on if you haven't already got it on, and to be ready to tell the 70-odd people on here as many uses as you can for a new word. It's not going to be paper clips, so don't bother revising that right now. So get yourselves ready. I've got my timer ready, and keep your eye on the screen in case it's you that something pings up as you're going to be in the spotlight and you're going to have to share. And the word, okay, I'm not actually going to do that for anyone, but you might be feeling slightly more anxious now than you perhaps had. I'm going to give you the word shoe. Off you go. As many uses as the word or for a shoe that you can think of. Okay, and then stop there. Right, and then just add up how many you've got. You don't actually have to share that. And I wouldn't be as mean as to pick on anyone. I hate that. You know, when someone says we're going to get someone to be a volunteer in a minute. But I'm hoping that from that, some of you, Hayley probably wouldn't bat an eyelid. Like, she would probably be completely happy about being the centre of attention, going, I've got all these ideas. But for a lot of people who don't like being the centre of attention, they would have been, you know, their heart would have been practically in their mouth, and they would have, you know, you have this kind of stress response, thinking, oh my gosh, it could be me having to be put in the spotlight. And it closes down your ability to think very well, and it has a real impact on your performance. So what we're going to do now is I want you to just consciously be aware of your breath and consciously let yourself relax for a minute. So a really quick way of doing that is to do something called 7-11 breathing, where you can feel yourself getting a bit flustered and actually identify now how you're feeling, a bit stressed. Yeah, some people say they only manage 3 or they manage 4. That sense of absolute panic. When you breathe now, just make sure your breath out is longer than your breath in. So 7-11 breathing is about breathing in for 7 and out for the count of 11. But actually, it doesn't matter. The numbers are irrelevant. It's about making sure your out breath is longer. It triggers your parasympathetic nervous system. It actually helps you relax. I could tell you a really bad joke to try and make you relax. I'm really bad at jokes. There's a joke, how many psychologists it takes to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to want to change. So there's all sorts of things I could do. And another way you can get yourself to relax a little bit is get a pen or something and put it in your mouth like this. Because when you actually smile, it sends a message, your body language sends a message to your brain to inform your brain how you're feeling. So we can get ourselves into quite a chilled state. So get a new piece of paper or take a piece of paper, if you're going to create a new list. I'm going to give you a new word and see how many uses you can come up with for a brick. Okay, and then count up how many you've got. And usually, hopefully, but usually most people come up with more words when they're in a relaxed state. So when you're feeling relaxed, your brain is able to function better, and therefore you're more productive. And when we think about being our best at work and being able to show everyone our strengths and our true ability, it's really important that we're able to use our intellectual and our emotional skills. And if you think about your emotional arousal, the first time when I was putting everyone into a panic state was quite high. And when our emotional arousal is high, it really slows down our ability to use our clever brain well. And that's a challenge for us, particularly as working women, juggling so many balls at any one time. So a lot of people are familiar with this inverted U model, and it really shows the relationship between emotional arousal along the bottom and your performance. So at the left end, you've got low emotional arousal. So when you're super chilled, super relaxed, you might be sitting down on a weekend, feet up on the sofa watching some TV or something. Or that's the same category for people who are bored at work. I'm guessing there are not many people on this call today who are in that situation of being super bored and sitting at their desk, twiddling their fingers, not knowing what to do. And at the other end, the high arousal is about burnout. That's the sense of when you're just being so overwhelmed, you're clinging on and you can feel that stress just bubbling under the surface. And you want to be somewhere in the middle where you can feel, you're alert. And this kind of links back to what some Haley was talking about. It's that sense of being alert and having the right level of emotional energy to move you forward. But it's not overstretching that. It's not overstepping the mark. And all this requires self-awareness. Now, that is something, emotional intelligence is one of the key factors that makes good leaders. And we know that, and the research backs that up. And for women, you have a massive advantage. So women, there's lots of research that shows, particularly for areas like self-awareness, women often have the edge. And so because we are quite aware of what's happening for us and we're quite aware of what's happening for other people, it means we're able to interact better. It means we're able to judge what's going on. And that's hugely important. And the self-awareness is more important at the moment because, well, has been with COVID, because there's so much being thrown at us and we're juggling so much. It's actually being aware and being able to take a step back and reflect on that. And that's simply because if you think about in your brain, you've got this part up here, which is your prefrontal cortex, and that's your clever brain. That's your cognitive brain where you're doing all your problem solving and planning, being rational, everything you need to do, reasoning, everything you need to do in terms of being able to work well in terms of planning and kind of executing your role. But then your limbic system is where all your emotional stuff happens. And when your emotional arousal gets higher, think of it like a jug of water or a container of water. When your emotional arousal gets higher, it basically fills up and it overtakes, it hijacks your emotional, your cognitive brain. We call it emotional hijacking. So you can get to the point, when you have those moments of doing something or saying something, thinking, oh my gosh, why did I do that? And you realise you've actually not been in control of yourself. It's your emotional drivers that are in control. So it's something really important to be aware of. So we need to be aware of our early warning signs. And actually, so I've got a poll, which I'm hoping is we can put up some questions for me now. This is I think Rhiann's doing this for me. To ask you about noticing your early warning signs, because some people have no idea what their early warning signs are. And I actually work with a lot of people. Some people are really good at noticing their early warning signs, but just completely ignore them because they don't have time to do anything with them. And some people are really good at prioritizing. So if you wouldn't mind just filling in your poll, just clicking on the circle and submitting. And when we think about early warning signs, you might have physiological ones like foot tapping or whatever. You might have emotional ones where you're feeling tearful. You might have sort of behavioural ones where you're biting your nails or picking your hair or pulling your hair, or cognitive ones where you're forgetful and so on. So we all have different ways. There's no sort of particular early warning sign, but it's just about noticing them. And it's also about being aware that sometimes some of these emotional responses are actually normal and they're okay. We don't have to catastrophize them. It's not like, oh my gosh, I've got some problem with my mental health, my well-being, and I need to go and see a professional. Actually, we know that we have to acknowledge what's going on around us, and our emotional responses match that. So actually, if we're feeling a bit more anxious, a bit more on edge, that's fine, because with what's been going on, that's quite a normal reaction. If you are having significant reactions that last sort of more than 2 weeks, and that's the time to perhaps have a conversation. So can we have the results of the poll, please? Yeah, so not surprising that actually lots of people notice them, but they ignore them because they don't have time to do anything with them. It's good that there are 27% of you who are noticing them and are actually acting to reduce them, because that puts you in control of what's going on for you. And that makes all the difference to how successful you are at work, how successful your relationships are. That has all the direct impact on your ability to manage yourself. So what I always encourage people to do is to give their amygdala, which is a little emotional like security officer in your brain that's looking out for threats and looking out for what's going on around you, and usually quite often misinterpreting it. Smoke alarm going off, is that a house burning down, or is that someone burning the toast? So your little amygdala, I always liken to a security officer, and your security officer can jump up and down at the slightest thing and get your emotional arousal to go up. You know, your amygdalas would have been firing just now when I said I'm going to put someone's camera and microphone on. So give your amygdala an identity. You know, a lot of people, for some reason, a lot of people call their Bob or Bill. I'm not entirely sure why. But then they notice Bob, they notice Bill making an appearance, and they actually can then start taking some control over that. So when we, there we are. So in terms of actually looking after our emotional needs, we need to make sure, or our emotional arousal, we need to make sure our needs are met. And these are the key emotional needs that are so important to look at. And I'm going to send you an emotional needs order as part, it'll come through to as part of the gift pack at the end. So when we think about competence and achievement, really taking time to think, what are you good at? What is it that gives you a sense of achievement? And this fits very much into what Hayley was talking about in terms of strengths. And knowing what are your strengths, knowing what you're successful at, and being able to let other people know that, and being able to kind of show other people, find opportunities for them to see your strengths. So you're really working on what you're naturally good at. The sense of security has been a real challenge more recently because of everything happening with COVID. And the thing that makes a difference for that is about having trusting relationships. So really making time to build those relationships with people. The communication is key, and I'm really pleased that Hayley talked a lot about feedback. I talk a huge amount about feedback, about giving feedback and receiving feedback and seeking feedback. Because if you have, the more information you have, it stops the assumptions, which are really dangerous things for us to have, and it stops our imagination, which is fueled by our amygdala, imagining the worst. So if you don't give it factual information, it tends to cling on to the negatives or the worst case scenario. So yeah, our amygdalas are not very optimistic. So give it factual information, seek feedback, communicate, build those trusting relationships. The control is so important. So when we think about control, noticing what you do have control over and what you don't have control over, and letting go of the stuff. We're so good in this country at talking so much about stuff. I mean, the weather's a classic, isn't it? We talk so much about stuff and get so worked up about things we don't have any control over. But actually that then fuels our amygdala and fuels our emotional responses. It keeps our emotional arousal high. So actually let go of the stuff we don't have control over or we can only influence. With control as well, it's about being able to reframe. So some people are really good at looking at the situation and thinking, oh gosh, I was a hopeless disaster. I was awful. If you reframe that, it's like, well, actually I could have done better. I know I could do better than that. Or I can do better that next time. Or I just had an off day, it's okay. So it's changing the sense of control. Noticing your inner voice, noticing your inner critic, that little voice, that amygdala, and saying hi to Bob and then saying, actually, you know what, I'm not listening to you today. You have choice. That inner voice, you have a choice over whether you listen to it or not. Your meaning and purpose, being clear about what gives you that sense of who you are and what you really want to do, why you're getting up in the morning, and making sure you're doing more of that in your day. Get rid of the stuff you're not so good at. Your sense of status, making sure that you are really clear about who you are and what you're proud of, and making sure that you communicate to everyone else around you what it is that you want to be known for, and ask other people, what is it that they think about you? What are the things that you value about you that you want other people to recognize in you, and make sure you focus on that. Your privacy, hugely important. Downtime, reflection, take a step back, find time to go for a walk during the day. 20 minutes break, but reduce your emotional arousal so your brain can work so much better in the afternoon. So there's no excuses for not having time to go for a walk. The 20 minutes makes you more productive. And then the emotional connection. We're social creatures and we need to connect, and it's finding opportunities to touch base with each other, say, informally as well as formally. I like the fact that Hayley said she's walking around her garden on her phone. Perfect. So just get rid of the Zoom. I know we love Zoom, but get rid of the Zoom and just chat and relax and connect with people in a much more real way if you can. But I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to let you send you emotional needs audit so that you can reflect on for yourself about where you're at and where you want to be, and start to use perhaps Hayley's planning to move you on with that.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This has been absolutely great. You've given so many practical insights and tips and so much to think about. I think there's been so many comments actually responding to what you highlighted, and what you've done is naturally built on what Hayley covered earlier. So it's been absolutely fantastic. So Cara, I think Cara's back in on the call. We're going to take a couple of questions.
Thank you so much everyone for all your comments and your questions and your being so open. I think that it makes discussions like this really easy and helpful. So I wanted to pick up on a couple of the questions from Hayley's session and also from Lisa's as well. So Hayley, someone asked that often they've experienced that they can get the promotions, they've done the work, they've believed in themselves, they get the promotion that they want, but then once they're in that position, they don't get the support that's needed to help them actually succeed and thrive in the new role. So to kind of help them scale their environments. And actually maybe Lisa, you and Hayley could touch on this, because you also talked about what it takes to thrive and to succeed where you're newly potted, to use your plant example, Lisa. Maybe you could speak to that, both of you.
Yeah, I'm happy to say something about that. I think there's a real misconception that when people get to a certain status, a certain level of the hierarchy, and they've fought to get a promotion or whatever that might look like, is that they are assumed that they know everything and that they are super competent. And actually for me, it's about being vulnerable, allowing yourself to be vulnerable and being really authentic and saying, I'm loving this and I'm really, great at these things, but actually I could do with some support around these particular areas. So I always talk to people about being very vulnerable and allowing themselves to say that they don't know everything, and actually kind of setting the scene that is normal for people in whatever position they're in. I think there's a real danger that the more senior people get, we tend to assume that they are just become these super people, that they just know everything, and we forget that they need as much support and learning as people when they're sort of starting out. But people only know that if you communicate that. it's about finding trusted people who you can say, actually, I'm loving this, but I could do with some support in these particular areas. I don't know what Hayley would add to that.
I suppose just, I would say asking for help. Asking for help is always an interesting one because people see it as a sign of weakness, but it's something I've always told my children from very young, actually, it's a sign of strength. I've got to a point where I recognise that I need help, or I need somebody else to accelerate. And I think when we achieve something like getting a new job, we're so excited and feel so competent that all of a sudden we don't think we should ask for help. So I would say if you're going into a role, I'll be looking at all the things where you think there could be some pressure put on you or some need, and whether or not you need to have help understanding it, or you need to know who around you has got that skill set and knowledge to defer to. Because as Lisa said, as managers, if you get promoted, you're not there because you've got all the answers. You're there because you've got the skills in leading people. So it's not about necessarily knowledge.
Thank you so much for that. And then just a very quick one, because I'm just conscious of time. This will be the last question we'll take here, but if we'll try and make sure there's other opportunities. And like I said, keep throwing your questions to me at the chat and we'll find other ways of facilitating getting you answers to them. But someone asked, can you touch a little bit on unconscious bias, because they've experienced that's affected them in interviewing processes, maybe being a woman or a person of colour, or over a certain age or under a certain age. Do you have any kind of tips for combating that, really?
Yeah, I think where I'd always start is actually to think clear about who you are and what your strengths are. And I think particularly when we're aware of the potential bias, we can end up, so I think Hayley or someone else, or maybe Rachel said about, when you're focusing on something, that's essentially what your brain is looking out for signs of. And actually, if we can be very clear about what our strengths are and communicating that really well. So, and actually being very, very focused on your successes and what makes you as good as, if not better than, other people if you're in an interview situation, for example. But I think if you're, it's about trying to communicate as clearly as you can what is good about you and the outcomes you've had, and actually sort of then challenging that quite clearly. So being able to say, have questions around how you stand out compared to other people, and not necessarily bringing up. Some people feel comfortable about bringing up particular things like skin of colour or gender or being a working mum or whatever, and people have conversations about that quite openly. Others don't feel confident about that, and they'd rather focus on what they know they're good at, and that those factors do not impact on their ability to be successful. So that's where I would normally start those conversations.
That's really insightful. Yeah, thank you very much. I think sometimes I fall into a few of those categories. Sometimes in my experience, I've also questioned the organisation about how they're going to treat me, because my mum did a good job of saying there's nothing wrong with you. You're bringing something to the table. So do they want to hire someone, or do they want to hire you? And if they want to hire you, then they need you more than you need them. So question them about how they're going to make space for you, and don't internalize those things. They're just losing out if they don't want you. So yeah.
I think if it's an interview, it's a challenge, isn't it? Because you're having to you don't necessarily know what their views are at that stage. I certainly think if you're within an organisation and you're then aware of what their unconscious bias is, definitely need to challenge it quite openly, and that comes back again to the communication.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay, I think I'm heading back to Lilla for the next portion of our event.
Thank you so much, Cara. Thank you again for answering the questions, Lisa. That was absolutely great. I just want to pick up on a couple of things, if you don't mind, as obviously I'm a woman of colour. I think that when you are aware that there are people who just won't want you in a role, or you perceive that could potentially happen to you, I really would build on Lisa's points. You've really got to know what you've got to offer. You've got to be confident. You've really got to believe in yourself. And I think this comes back to having a really good network of friends and supporters and champions, people with like pom-poms who champion you in the background. You really have to go to people and talk to them, get them to encourage you and support you, because you will need that support. Even if you do get that promotion or the additional support, you will still need it all the way through your career. So I'd really encourage you to find people that you absolutely trust. And also to be wise in who you pick to trust and talk to. It might not always be the right thing to talk to colleagues because they may be going through their own things and may not be able to look at what you're sharing and then hold it without sort of looking at the whole organisation and its potential impact. So you really just need to pick people wisely within organisations and outside, so you've got a real broad spectrum of people to speak to, especially in this time when everyone's sort of tending to be at home. And the other thing is that somebody commented on sort of caring too much. You know, as women, we care too much about our roles potentially. I mean, I care a lot. And I said to my husband the other day, I think I live and breathe British water. And to me, I'm not embarrassed about that. I'm not ashamed to say that I'm passionate about what I do. I mean, I've got one life, so I need to live it and live it well. So as far as I'm concerned, that's not something that I'm ashamed of. And I think if you love what you do, you shouldn't be embarrassed about it, because actually it makes you really great at what you're doing, or it makes you want to be great and it makes you want to be excellent. So I think that whatever we do, we should own it and not be ashamed or embarrassed about it, and just go for it, because that will breed success. So I'm going to now bring on Lynn Cooper, who's naturally going to bring us in terms of re-emergence. How do we flower and come out the other side of this lockdown? So I'm really looking forward to this session as well. So Lynn, over to you.
And thank you and good morning to all. We've had a fantastic variety of speakers today. We've had Rachel going from the inspiring through to Hayley and Lisa, thought-provoking and practical. And now I think to close, we're kind of switching back to the personal and inspiring. So for today's event, I was asked to invite 3 women to share how they've coped with the pandemic and how they envisage their careers post-lockdown, whenever that might be. I would say, first of all, there's many positives to webinars. We save on time, we save on cost, we save the environment, and we also reach a wider audience. But it does have its challenges, as I've just found there. And unfortunately, one of our speakers learned on Friday that her company denies access to Zoom, so our 3rd speaker is unable to join us today. Maybe as well running a bit short time, and that certainly won't detract from our other 2 speakers. They are Jules Flory from South West Water and Maddie Crisp from Angling Water. I'm sure you will find them both very interesting and inspiring. Now, they've both been asked to speak for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions. So please type away during their presentations and I'll read them out when the time comes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. It's very nice to see you all, and I'm very humbled to have the opportunity to speak to you this morning. It's been great so far. I've been scribbling notes because there's a few overlaps between what my predecessors this morning have said and what I was going to say. So let's see if I can amalgamate, the join-ups and tell you a bit about what's happened to me. COVID. Okay, this is the bit I wasn't sure would work. I'll get in my flow once you can see my screen. Okay, it says it's working. So yeah, today's the 27th of July. I find time has stretched in the last few months. This is a picture to just help ground today's 5 minutes. I work with South West Water. Before lockdown, was very excited. That's my son, who's had chronic health issues since 2016, since a bang on the head. And that's us in the first week of March out planting 2,000 trees, which was the beginning of a big push for us in my role to try and plant extra trees. And yeah, I'll tell you more about that later. My role as a biodiversity delivery manager at South West Water is focused on how we manage our land for wildlife. A lot of my challenge during COVID has been about how do we make sure we understand our impact of the land that we own. better, and so I've had to learn a bit about mapping so that we can identify where we've got priority habitats and species that need our tender loving care.
Sorry, Jules. Can I just ask you to put it on full screen? Okay, great, you've done it.
Thank you. I'm probably not an extrovert, although I'd like to be, is what I've learned during COVID. I've quite enjoyed the chance to focus. But yeah, so the first month of lockdown, I had some very big deadlines coming up in my role. It's focused on delivering legislative obligations. The water industry makes a deal every 5 years with the EA and Natural England, and I was responsible for quite a lot of deliverables that were all due for the end of March. I've written 2021, sorry about that, but it was actually, just gone. And we had, there's been a sharp decline in eel populations across Europe, and I had an issue getting eel passes delivered during the winter because water levels were the highest they'd been on record. So we lined up during that last week of March to get some eel pass schemes delivered. And that's a picture of the eel fun fair at Loxall Ponds finally going in May. There was a big piece of work going on to demonstrate our commitment to the ecologically sensitive and designated land that we own, sites of special scientific interest, a whole range of things from marshes to valley fens that were being managed for a wide range of species. And actually, it was hard reaching out to people on site in those first few weeks because there was so much adjustment going on during lockdown, but we did manage to adjust using technology, liaise with everybody and close the projects out and meet our deadlines. I think a real thing that made that work with all the different various parties was we had a good plan in place and lots of agreed ways we were going to communicate, which actually really held us in good stead during that first month. And then the brave new world of Zoom entered my life, and in my role we were invited to participate in a conference about the interesting species that are roaming in Devon and Cornwall, about beavers. It was 93 people, a bit like today. My first experience of Zoom was extraordinary brave new world of people being able to see each other and share and maybe not get together and have a cup of tea, but move things forward. So I hope that's what people get from this today. Biodiversity Seasonal Skillshare, that was my first attempt at hosting. I have to really thank the lasses back there doing a great job because I found my first one of these very challenging indeed. And as the months go by, we all get a bit more comfortable with it. I have also been very, very lucky to be able to work on developing a partnership with a charity that runs all our reservoirs, and actually again MS Teams has been fantastic for sharing information and sharing training and getting some fantastic speakers in and upskilling ourselves and taking some time to think through the changes that are coming around how we measure, make measurable improvements to the environments we're looking after. I'm not a didactic person, I'm very 3D. I'm kind of reminded when Hayley was talking, I have a very exuberant hand-waving presence. So I do look forward to doing those sessions in the future in my 3D form rather than in this 2D form, which I still find a little challenging. So what did I have to learn? Then we get into the third month of COVID in my head, and I had a key project to get off the ground. And this is my comfort zone, I think. My key skills was learning how to analyse data. I've been a wastewater, I've worked in the water industry for 10 years, been in this role for 2 years. And I had to really, if you like, push myself to get into the environment team, develop my knowledge and experience to get this role. But this felt like when I realised that I needed to review all the land we own and think about how we might realise biodiversity opportunity. COVID gave me time to think about my skill set and develop my ability to make maps like this one. It's very, it's something that would have taken ages had I tried to do it around my busy day job in the busy office. I really enjoyed the quiet time I needed to learn how to do a new skill. I had to remember to reach out to people because I couldn't rely on bumping into them in the corridor. I had to be kind to the ones I live with as well as to myself, and I had to be very, very patient. I think I've definitely developed more patience around computer connection and network issues than I had before COVID. Lynn sent out the invite for today. I hope I'm not running out of time, but I'll get a text if I am. Lots of things were going on in our organisation. South West Water's always been part of a bigger organisation called Pennon, and the other half of that organisation, really, in terms of size, is a waste management company called Viridor. And somehow, in the middle of COVID, we're managing a very big restructure because Viridor's been sold, which has put a different focus on my job going forward. We've already been working quite hard at that more strategic level to improve our performance in the context of the United Nations goals for healthy habitats. So I've been involved in a lot of change, I suppose, that again I've had the time to focus on. Somewhere in amongst all that, I wanted to tell you about a tree commitment that Water UK made 2 years ago, and this was our first year of delivery, and I was very excited in May to count up the number of trees we'd planted, and it came to a fantastic 49,000 trees. This picture here, though, was me after 3 months of lockdown sending a little thing out on LinkedIn that said, it feels like I've been on a boat and I've really enjoyed my crew. That's me as a little kid coming into Appledore, where we used to have the boat that my dad built. And yeah, I'm very relieved to be back in the workshop with my dad again after this period of lockdown, because that's where I find my real calm, quiet, and yeah, I guess my ability to de-stress. And yeah, my terra firma is kind of working wood in a workshop on my own. Yeah, I think the more home working is a new challenge for me because I want to be around people. I think I'm a change manager that best manifests that change when I'm with people and can tailor my message to where they're at and have something more three-dimensional. Again, I was looking forward to working with Viridor, so a lot of things have got to be rethought without that partnership effort, and maybe develop new types of partnerships. And yes, not exactly a new pressure, but the same pressure in the water industry that seems to run through our activities, which is that there's a lot of financial pressure after COVID. So my vision for 25 years, 2025, gosh, still sounds like the future to me, is that we have a better understanding of the range of ecosystems that the organisation provides. And as part of the environment team, we will have delivered a vast array of investigations and improvement and really, really dug under the actual risks and opportunities we have. And we will be planting in partnership a lot more trees and restoring a lot of peatland and potentially really upskilling and working in the context that is the nature recovery networks. I hope that wasn't too fast, and I look forward to any questions you might have.
Maddie, we're ready for you if you're ready.
Hello, do you want to hear me? I'll share my screen. Right, hopefully you can see it. Is it not gone up? Oh, here we go. Okay. So, what do you mean I can't come into the office today? Good morning, everyone. And this is the story that began with that very phone call at the beginning of the lockdown. Absolute pure panic. How am I going to do this? Working from home with 3 children. What does this mean for my career? And how am I going to cope without my sanctuary, my desk, the only place where I can be? Maddie. This was going to be a challenge like no other. This was going to be a challenge. With any change, there's always this curve of negativity, then action before it comes to acceptance. So after the panic mode has settled in, we got into action about what we're going to do and how we're going to tackle this together as a family. The sudden change, working from home, homeschooling 3 children of different ages, different abilities, learning methods, and to keep my sanity somehow, was going to be tough. It was a little while till we got our flow, but figuring out what worked for us and what didn't. And we soon found out after about day 3 that none of us liked structures or schedules, and what worked for other families on social media definitely did not work for us. Over time, we finally found our rhythm, assuring my colleagues on video calls if they see a naked child run behind me, ignore her, don't be alarmed, don't wave, it only encourages her. I've actually learned a lot about my children. As a parent, you always wonder what they're going to be like when they're older. And watching them learn at home gives you a real insight to all the wonderful possibilities. For example, I did not know that my eldest one would be any good at woodwork. She's amazing. And my middle one, although she's not very good at reading, her maths and science is fantastic. I've also learned a lot about myself. With the daily humdrum of work life taken away quite abruptly, I've had time to work on me and what I wanted out of my career in the water industry, the industry that I'm so passionate about. Mapping out a clear development plan, even finished project management, finally finished my coursework, gained corporate membership at the Institute of Water, and realising that I had gaps that I wanted to overcome. And one of those was speaking. I wanted a voice to speak out and influence others. As an introverted extrovert, it's a thing. I struggle with speaking, particularly in groups greater than a few. So I joined Toastmasters, scariest thing I've ever done. We meet virtually over Zoom. We do table topics where we do off-the-cuff speeches. We have a development plan as well in there, so you learn on how to do the extra skills and how to speak. This journey, the Speakers Club, has given me great confidence, not only in my personal life, but my work life also. I've become much more braver, hence why I've opted to speak today and share my story. Before lockdown, I used to compartmentalise my life. Work Maddie and home Maddie was so very different. And I'd since figured out pre-lockdown that actually that didn't work for me, and it never would have done. I would never have known that unless the lockdown had happened. I needed instead of mental health being an afterthought, it's actually become an everyday part of my life. I've now become this merged person of myself, but I'm still learning. I'm still learning about all the things that I can do. And I absolutely love it. It's made such a difference. The lockdown has given me the gift of time to be more productive and creative with my work, time to get to know my children better, and time to focus on me and my career. And this is my team. Thank you. I didn't speak too quickly.
That's perfect. I think, Lynn, if you want to just...
Okay, well, thank you very much, both of you, very to go through that. Very different and interesting stories. One maybe focusing a bit more on the work life and the other on the home life. I've got a question that I'll just throw into the equation before the others start coming in. And I think you're pre-warned of this. It's something that one of the speakers asked in the call earlier on. Has COVID-19 opened any doors for you, and has it closed any doors for you? Maybe Jules first and then Maddie.
It's an interesting one for me because, yes, lots of doors have opened for my son, who's been ill for such a long time and was feeling better about a month before COVID started. And so we've got a whole suite of tutors, psychological help. So actually on my family side, I've been around and available to support him developing and recovering as a 17-year-old after a head injury and a long period of chronic fatigue. And yeah, so it's a kind of real win for me that we've moved forward from a time that was they were in lockdown before this started. They had the skills. I was the one that needed to adjust to not having so much going on. So yeah, the things I miss, I'm not sure if it's doors closed, but the things that I'm really embracing is getting back into the workshop with my dad, because that's soul food for me, and getting back on the water. I'm dying to get back to the beach.
Okay, thanks, Jules. How about you, Maddie?
Actually, I thought a lot of doors were closed at the beginning, but it's actually opened an awful lot for me, mainly because my job is very analytical. I'm a data analyst. I code for a living. I absolutely love that. However, I wanted to move away from that and go into project management, because that's where my natural skills lie, towards that side. So yeah, I'm finding it easier to get on with my projects, because I'm able to connect with people a lot quicker. Whereas I'm not trying to find them or hunt them down in the office. I can just click a button and they are there, and I can get a full range of what's been going on. So it has opened an awful lot for me, and my personal development as well.
Thanks, Maddie. Another one that you've just heard, technology gives more people a voice. Are you hearing any different voices? Maybe Maddie first, and then Jules, voices that you wouldn't ordinarily have heard if you'd been at work?
Yeah, I work in a data team. They are huge introverts. I am the only slightly extrovert in the team. Whereas before we have a team meeting, they would sit very quietly, and a lot of the ideas on how to get things moving and how we can work in, because I predominantly work in leakage, weren't being listened to, or they weren't saying anything. So since this new technology of Zoom and all these other fantastic things, they've actually got a voice now. Or they'll quickly message me. If they don't want to say in the video call, they would message me and go, how about this? Fantastic. It's brilliant.
How about you, Jules?
So the thing that I've noticed is actually that it's kind of the equality that's seeping into the way we think about things that's really changed for me in my role, because I'm regional. So if you think Devon, Cornwall, Bournemouth, parts of Somerset, there was always a focus on things going on in Exeter and things going on in Plymouth, which are the main cities in Devon. And it's really interesting to hear more of the Western Cornwall voices. The new colleagues we have in Bournemouth who've only been part of the organisation for a while. It feels like especially North Devon has joined the organisation, because they used to be in a world of their own. And we never used to get up there to run events, and now they're there and the ideas are coming in, and it feels like the diversity in our organisation is much more easily represented. My relationships in Cornwall have vastly improved, because I'm a bit of a Devonian at heart, hence the Appledore boat thing. But I was one of the few senior managers that made it up to North Devon on a regular basis, but now it feels like we're all being heard a bit more.
Well, let's hope you understood the accents. Well, thanks very much, both of you, once again. Very, very interesting stories. Thanks for taking the questions at the end. And I think now, if I can hand back to Leila to close proceedings. Thanks again.
Thank you. So thank you so much to Lynn, to Jules, to Maddie. Thank you for your presentations, and thank you for sharing how you sort of see COVID-19, as traumatic as it has been, as a way in which some doors obviously are closed, but some have sort of peeped a bit open, and how you're sort of trying to make the most of it in terms of, for example, the Toastmasters International course. I think that's really been helpful for quite a few people on the call, and obviously Institute of Water and the training that offers. So I think there's probably lots of things that we can do really to develop ourselves during this particular period of time. So thank you so much for that session. So now I'm responsible for wrapping up now. And first of all, before I do that, I just really want to thank again all of our speakers for taking part, and all of you for dialing in and also adding your comments and feedback. Has been absolutely great. So I'm going to thank Hayley Monks. Really appreciate your fantastic presentation, and you as well, Lisa Lloyd. Thank you too for the range of material that you covered, which gave us a lot of food for thought. That was brilliant. Thank you to Lynn, thank you to Maddie, and thank you to Jules. Now, in terms of what next, so we don't like at British Water just to organise an event and for it to be standalone, which is why it fits within our campaign. So one of the things that we're working on at the moment is offering women, adding to the Women's Utilities Network mentoring program that already exists. We are going to collaborate with an organisation called the 30% Club. And if you don't know them, I would encourage you to Google them and see what they do. Now, companies can sign up with them and offer women within their organisation opportunities to be mentored by some really fantastic range of people. And I got a chance to be mentored by the 30% Club. And the 30% Club is really about making sure that we have 30% of women in senior roles within the FTSE 100. So women on boards is a particular focus of theirs. And what we've done through CARA is formed a relationship whereby we're going to offer women across the industry an opportunity to be mentored or to be a mentee as part of the 30% Club. So that's an exciting initiative that we are working on. And the other thing I also want to add is that we are working closely with Faversham House, with WWT, who also have an award ceremony for women in the industry. So we're going to be creating feeder events that channel women through to their award ceremony next year. So those are two of the exciting initiatives that we have. We will also be organising more events like this. So the chats have been really, really helpful. And I'm going to hand over to Rianne, who's going to do a poll, because we'd love to get some feedback before we let you all go to help us form what next. Thank you. So I think what we might do, Rianne, is send out the questionnaire again, the short questionnaire again, just for those who weren't able to see the poll and would like to give feedback. I've definitely found this fascinating, and I'm going to be listening to the recording again, because when you're a facilitator, you kind of miss some of the bits that are mentioned, but it really has been so good. I would love to do this event again. So we might include a question in the poll, Rianne, or a questionnaire as to whether it should be 2 months or 3 months down the line. But I think the WhatsApp group will definitely help, I think, to facilitate some discussions, to check in with each other, make sure that we're doing okay. It really doesn't matter how senior you are in the industry. Everybody has their own insecurities. Everybody has their own issues going on. So I think everybody needs support. So just do remember that. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is that everybody's on their own journey, and everybody's boat is different. But I think if we can find that sort of safe space and share and talk and get people to encourage us, whether we want to climb the career ladder or not, it's not always about going and heading for promotion. It's about being happy and fulfilled in the role that you're doing and getting that support on a daily basis. So with that, it's 12:01, so we haven't done too badly on time. I just want to say thank you again. Please stay in touch with me and the team. It's been wonderful having you all, and we will get back to you with feedback on the event and the next initiatives. So thank you so much, and take care.